The year was 1892. A fire had destroyed Academic Hall, and what remained were 6 stone columns, pillars of a great young university. Out of the ashes, one man rose to declare his devotion to the university and save what we have come to know as the enduring symbol of Mizzou. Missouri curator Gideon Franklin Rothwell proclaimed, "Let the columns stand. Let them stand 1,000 years, a memorial to those who, in their magnificent presence, learned what life and duty are, to live the one and do the other. They will be a rallying point of future devotion and service to the university."
Why don't we leave them up? And so then he introduced the resolution to rescind his prior resolution to save the columns.
But beyond his prophetic words, Rothwell was a man who saw the future of this university in more than just the columns, but buildings that showed a commitment to a campus tailored for student learning. So in 1905, at the urgence of fellow curator and current athletic director Clark Hetherington, Rothwell commissioned the building of a gymnasium on the corner of Hitt and Rollins Streets near the football field. Rothwell Gymnasium became the first home of Tiger athletics. The basketball team spent countless hours practicing for upcoming games, especially for a rival that has only grown over time, the University of Kansas. In 1918, the men of Old Gold and Black took home the Missouri Valley Championship on their home court in Rothwell. It was in the early 1900s that this first university west of the Mississippi began to find its niche in American higher education, in athletics, scholarly pursuits, and building a campus for the future. Rothwell Gymnasium was the university's first commitment to a place that was not just for athletics, but intramural sports, student activities, and the social center of the campus. Over the years, the campus grew, and eventually MizzouRec services and facilities would take over the building, breathing new life into not just the history of Rothwell, but the hollowed limestone walls themselves. The great original trophy room, once host to the Board of Curators and later the Men's M Athletic Club, has been restored and now bears a name worthy of its history, the Old Varsity Club. And from the offices where Don Farrow, Chester Brewer, and Anton Stankowski once reigned, new faces and leadership have come, but the history remains. In 2005, Rothwell the Gymnasium and the Place of Memories Past celebrates its 100th year. And for those who know some of its magic, and even those who don't, all will find a building new in vitality, one that continues to form a special link to Mizzou's past, present, and future. Athletic Director Chester Brewer envisioned a limestone fortress to house his Missouri Tigers, a field house fit for the new age of athletics and a growing campus. Made of stone from the local Hinkson quarry, Brewer Fieldhouse began with his vision and the help of campus's best leaders. In early 1927, Brewer developed a fieldhouse building committee of himself, Leslie Sowen, P.B. Rollins, R.B. Price, and E. Sidney Stevens. They met to make plans for a building unlike any in university history. The fieldhouse, it seemed, would eclipse Rothwell Gymnasium in every way. It would be larger, have an indoor track, a full basketball court, electric scoreboard, batting cages, seating for over 2,000, and even a ticket window. But more importantly, it would provide valuable space for students and etch itself into history as the quintessential home for Tiger athletics. It was said there was nothing like a game at the Fieldhouse or a concert rocking its very stone walls. There was a mystique about Brewer Fieldhouse that cannot be matched by any venue or arena since its time. Its history is one steeped in celebration, sweat, and cheers.
Hello, everybody. This is Jack Buck at Brewer Fieldhouse in Columbia, Missouri. And in this afternoon's ball game, the University of Kansas beats the University of Missouri. Rather, we've got a full house here at Brewer Fieldhouse. A lot of action, a lot of noise, as you can well hear, with the Missouri band in the background.
Brewer Fieldhouse hosted Tiger basketball from the first game in 1930 to the winning basket of the Oklahoma game in 1972. Regardless of world events, dwindling team size, or even war, Brewer Fieldhouse united all students in the common goal of seeing the Tigers win.
It was an experience. First of all, the crowd was, the Missouri crowd was just so exciting. The seats went right down to the edge of the court, basically. And so they were right behind the opposing team's benches.
The Tigers had a winning debut in the Fieldhouse, capturing their first Big Six title in 1930. But the next decade would be challenging for the men of black and gold. The World War II draft caused the team size to reach only 10, but Coach Edwards and his team didn't despair. They just kept on playing. In the late 1940s, Wilbur Sparky Stallcup stepped in as head basketball coach. His first year, he led the Tigers to second place in the Big Six, once again filling the bleachers of the Fieldhouse to the brim. In 1967, the former standout player known as Stormin' Norman returned to his alma mater and to the helm of Tiger basketball. The cheering students returned to the Fieldhouse, and with borrowed bleachers from Brewer Field, the house was continually packed with upwards of 5,000 students in standing room only. It was a home court advantage unlike any other.
But when you came to a game, and this is after I came back as a head coach, people got behind the teams, the band. I mean, it was kind of an electric situation.
Stewart would signal a new era in Tiger basketball and Missouri spirit. His first year, he led the Tigers to an unprecedented 10-16 record and would continue to push them forward into Missouri basketball history.
It was a neat place, a real home court advantage, if you will. We didn't lose a lot of games at home.
But the great partnership of Tiger basketball and Brewer Fieldhouse would not last. In 1972, the Tigers played their last game at the Fieldhouse, winning against the University of Oklahoma. It was a bittersweet ending for all, but the Fieldhouse, even without Tiger basketball, remained an integral part of university life. In 1911, when Chester Brewer invited alumni to come home for the annual Mizzou versus KU football game, he couldn't have known it would be the beginning of a school tradition, not just here, but across the nation. And each year, as students and alumni paraded down Rollins to the football field, Rothwell Gymnasium and eventually Brewer Fieldhouse was always their backdrop. Both buildings served as cornerstones of the celebration, hosting the annual homecoming dance and game day festivities. And as the campus grew, tradition evolved. Now the Fieldhouse has found a new role with MizzouRec services and facilities. Brewer Breakfast invites guests back to the Fieldhouse to watch the MU women's basketball team scrimmage and get front row seats for the parade. The event recalls the early days of homecoming when guests packed the Fieldhouse on the morning of the parade in anxious anticipation of the day's events. But beyond homecoming, the Fieldhouse and Gymnasium became a social place for students. Countless military balls, barn warmings, concerts, and other social occasions were held there every year. As Brewer became the place for campus events, bands loved the open atmosphere of the Fieldhouse just as much as students enjoyed seeing the best performers of their time. It was said that when a band played in the Fieldhouse, a special aura filled the room. The natural acoustics of the building, aided by the solid limestone walls and wood ceiling, blended with the dirt floor and constant cheers to create an experience that was nothing short of magical. Add to that the thousands of fans, and it felt as though every time there was just something special in the air. From the jazz age artists of the Dave Brubeck Quartet to the classic guitar riffs of Three Dog Night and the Allman Brothers Band, groups traveled to Columbia to rock the Fieldhouse and feed that signature mystique that was only found in Brewer. For a few magic moments, it didn't matter that assignments were due or tests to be taken. It was all about the music, the dancing, and the field house. It was in those golden years, from the 30s through the 60s, that the field house became the destination for all things athletic, social, and even academic. It spanned the life of the students, bringing them in as young freshmen for a physical education class, keeping them going through the first few years with Tiger basketball, dances, and especially live performances. And in the end, Brewer Fieldhouse marked not only the beginning of a student's days at Mizzou, but the end. For come each May, students made the graduation march from Jesse Hall to the stone walls of Brewer to walk across the stage and create an end to their own era, their college years. No matter where life took a Mizzou student, a little of Brewer and the university would always be with them. And just as students saw changes in their own lives, so did Rothwell Gymnasium and Brewer Fieldhouse. The athletic department continued to grow for both women and men. The basketball Tigers continued to push themselves win after win. And for the Fieldhouse, it just wasn't big enough for it all. The Tigers played their last Fieldhouse basketball game in 1972, and Elton John was the final performer to take the Brewer stage. It was a bittersweet ending and yet a beginning at the same time. The mystique would never die, and Brewer and Rothwell would now become an integral part to the campus in a different way. The next time around, it wouldn't be about dances, barn warmings, or even athletics. It would be the dawn of a recreation renaissance, with Mizzou leading the field and influencing the rest of the nation. A renaissance even Chester Brewer would be proud of, filled with new traditions, making history all over again. Student Voices, Mizzou Nation, a recreation renaissance. They've all become familiar terms and expressions of the idea surrounding the Rothwell Brewer renovation and expansion project. But just as each building has its own history, whether it's in athletics, social events, or a place where students could call home, so does a project, especially one that encompasses 9 years and $50 million. Gideon Rothwell, Clark Hetherington, and the men of the Brewer Fieldhouse Building Committee wanted to create spaces that would change students' lives and bring them together. Now, some 100 years later, those same buildings not only lie in history, but are making history all over again as part of the reinvention of campus recreation. The Rothwell Brewer renovation and expansion project began much like that of building Rothwell Gymnasium and Brewer Fieldhouse. The campus was growing, and students needed more space, but more importantly, they needed space that would be theirs, reflect their interests and their energy. In 1996, students began to voice concern over the lack of available recreation space. 2 years later, MSA President Rob Willard initiated a comprehensive study to determine what was needed. In October 2001, a student referendum was passed, signaling the beginning of a new era for campus recreation at Missouri.
There wasn't a connection between this department and the student complaints that they had been airing, and so my job was to really integrate and work with students to figure out what the facilities would end up looking like later on down the road, and so that's how it all began.
And so the expansion, renovation, and reinvention was born out of the voices of students and the idea of a recreation complex that was more than just basketball courts, treadmills, and intramural sports. A place that was a nation unto itself, the MizzouRec Nation.
You know, if we're going to create an environment uniquely and distinctly for the students of the University of Missouri, well, they're Tigers. We should give them their jungle.
The MSA administrations of Mark Bresnahan and Michael Wright would see the project through the critical design process, Board of Curators approval, bid openings, and the March 18, 2003 groundbreaking. Now, 2 years and many voices later, the Rothwell Brewer renovation and expansion has come alive in colors of black and gold. The Fieldhouse that began as a place for athletics still houses some of the best student athletes Missouri has to offer. They just prefer the Fieldhouse courts and rec sports games to show off their ability. And the mystique is still alive. It's just broadcast over Zoo TV or in the high-energy music heard from the new fitness center, the Jungle Gym. 20,000 square feet of over 100 cardio machines and weight equipment to match make this space one of many centers of student activity. And this is what recreation at Missouri has become. The faces and voices of students in every space, design, idea, and program. What began as their call for more space and equipment has become an entire experience tailored to the unique lifestyle and energy of a Missouri student.
It's really amazing what we took and turned this space into areas that seem so comfortable and that are so serviceable for our students and that really make a lot of sense for, I think, what they want in their lives and what they told us that they wanted.
And athletics, in a more true sense, has come back to Rothwell. Swimming and diving have made their new home in what was once the largest gym on campus. 1.5 million gallons of water, complemented by a state-of-the-art timing system, dive well, and club pool make up just a few features of the new aquatic center. And that's just what's on the surface in the new rec complex. But take a step back, and what truly surrounds each and every member is an entire nation built on community values, a health-conscious culture, and a vision of networking members together. The traditional goals of recreation meet the 21st century in a place that echoes the past, preserves the future, and sets the pace for a leisure experience unlike any other. It might have been 100 years since the first limestone block was laid for Rothwell Gymnasium, some 75 years since Brewer Fieldhouse first opened its doors. And while the campus has grown up and the faces changed, what remains is the feeling of honor, the energy the buildings created, the people whose cheers and laughter filled the walls, whether it was win or lose. But this new nation, this renaissance, this reinvention didn't happen overnight, but was born from a staff dedicated to students and the future. You could call them pioneers, even risk takers, but they've become engineers of a new era, a team invested in the practice of building a nation. Their spirit flows throughout the facility, from the design of each space to the smallest of details. At its heart, MizzouRec is an organization made of programs, facilities, and a staff of students and professionals that seek to create not just a place for leisure, but an experience. Team Mizzou has become a nationally recognized student staffing program of which its members are some of the best and brightest students at the university. And the same can be said for the professional staff members, who continually win campus leadership awards given to only the best in their field. But they wouldn't say the process was always easy and without doubts. But here, at the end of a 9-year adventure, this staff of engineers of the future can look back and know it was worth the effort.
It was, for me at one point in time, about the end result, which was the completion of this project. But it really isn't. And my experience has been the journey itself, the people you've met along the way, the people you've worked with. That's the true reward.
This project, this is the culmination of my life's work. And I'm terrifically proud of it because it's, well, it's incredibly special. And it's bold. And we took all the right risks.
It was about a year ago that Senior Associate Director Dan Shipp pitched the idea of a commemorative video project to me, something that would take a look back at not only the history of Rothwell, but the history of Brewer and the project itself. I was a broadcast major, so I knew how to put video together, but this was an entirely different story. Not only did I have to take into account his ideas, but the fact that we were a year away from final completion of our facilities. But in the past year, things did get finished. The project evolved many times, and what you've just seen is the final product, something I'm very proud of and I think turned out really well. In the end, I know I couldn't have done it without the help of some very special people and the ability to interview some of the most important people in our university's history. And like Dan said in his own interview, for him, the 9-year project was really about the journey and not the destination. And I can say the same. The people I've met, the things I've learned, and the history I will take with me, I will never forget. For me, this past year was more about the journey than the destination.